Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. I'm your host today, Scott, but I'm joined by another Scott, Scott Robert Lim. How are you today? Welcome.
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure to have you. We're super excited to talk to you today about mastering one light portraits. So very happy to talk about that. Very happy as well to have our sponsors on board for this. StellaPro Lights. Thank you so much to the crew over there. As always, you know the drill, but if this is your first time joining us here, just as a reminder, on Zoom, if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A tab. And if you're joining us on Facebook or Vimeo, you can use the comment section, and we'll make sure to get those questions over to Scott towards the end of this presentation. But otherwise, I want to say thanks again to Scott and our sponsor, StellaPro Lights. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Scott.
Wow, that was a quick introduction there. I'm used to 5 minutes of other stuff, but I guess let's get going, huh? Now I can take my time on my presentation, starting it off early. And let's see if we can get going here. All right, so we're going to be talking about creating your own light. And some of you I know out there might be a little bit unsure about using your own light. Maybe you've been a natural light shooter for years, and the thought of taking your light and creating your light might be scary to you. Or maybe you've tried it before and you just haven't had much success with it, and then you're probably it's just easier to use natural light. Well, today we're going to help you understand how to use one light, and actually you'll be surprised how easy it actually is. And I'm going to show you what a light can do for you and what are some of the effects and some of the great imagery you can get just using one single light. And so what we're going to learn today is a little bit about this new light called the StellaPro Reflex. It's pretty revolutionary in that it's kind of got its own category of light and in the lighting world. And what makes it different and why do I like use it? Then we're going to talk about hard light and what are the qualities of hard light and what are some of the best techniques to use when you're using hard light. Then we're going to talk about soft light. What are the qualities of soft light? And I'm going to give my secret formula on how to create soft light portraits anytime, anywhere, using this formula that I've used for years and years and years and have a lot of success using. Then we're talking about backlight and how to use light as a backlight and what that does, rim light, hair light, etc. And at the end, I'm going to show you a creative lighting technique. You've maybe you've seen it, but it's pretty rare, and it's going to take you out of your normal sphere of thinking when it comes to lighting. And it's a really creative idea. And I'm going to actually explore it a little bit more in the future. Then I'm going to give you some free stuff. So you want to stay to the very end, and then we're going to have Q&A afterwards. All right, so that's kind of our game plan for today. So let's get going and let's talk a little bit about what is this StellaPro Reflex. And their motto is one light every shot. Now that's a pretty bold claim, but let me explain what's so great about it. First of all, it's an entirely new lighting category. It's called continuous strobe hybrid, meaning it's a video light and it's a strobe, and it can do both. And it does it differently too. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how it does that. First of all, you can shoot this up to 20 frames per second. And if you used a flash before, you'll realize that when you say put your flash in full power and you fire it, it will usually take 1 or 2 seconds to recycle before you can take another shot. Well, if you use the StellaPro Reflex, within that 1 or 2 seconds, you can shoot 20 to 40 shots and it will strobe every single time. And so that's pretty revolutionary. So if you're doing action, or if you're doing something like up to 20 frames per second, you could still use this in flash mode and you won't miss a beat with it, which is pretty cool. And you get 15,000 plus flashes per charge. I know some of us, we don't even shoot 15,000 photos the entire year. So you technically can charge yourself once and use it the entire year. That's how incredible it is. But meaning if you put it in flash mode, pretty much for every session in the world, you won't even have to change the battery. You'll have plenty of juice and you won't have to worry about it, having to recharge either, which is pretty darn amazing. Now, on top of that, it's a 12,000 to 18,000 lumen. Oh, I meant to say video light. Okay, well, oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's a 12,000 to 18,000 lumen flash. So in flash mode, it's very bright. Now, the typical video light that I see most students use are usually about 1,000 or 2,000 lumens, right? If you were just to go and say, I need a video light, and you find something and you buy something at B&H, typically they're about 1,000 or 2,000 lumens for the more pocket-sized video lights. Now, these are much, much brighter, so anywhere from 5 to 10 times brighter than your typical flash, which is huge, typical video light. And so that's in flash mode. In video mode, it's 6,000 to 9,000 lumens. So flash mode, you can actually double the power, which is great. It never overheats. Now, this is a true story. I was teaching a workshop with this light, and I literally had about 20 other photographers, and we were all using the same light in flash mode because it'll use an Ellen Chrome trigger or a Godox trigger. So I had at least 10 other people. We were all firing the flash at the same time. I had it at 10 frames per second. I know other people had their cameras at 10 frames per second, and we were just going crazy with it. All of us just shooting with it at the same time. It never overheated. Now, of course, because if I'm firing at 10 frames per second and 3 other people are firing at 10 frames per second, there's going to be a time where it might miss because you can't handle everybody's flash, but it never overheated. And I don't know about you, when I'm shooting weddings, especially receptions, and I've got more than one or even just myself, I'm shooting my flash a lot. And then after 10, 20 minutes, a lot of times it overheats and then you got to wait. You miss the most important moment, all that kind of stuff, but not with this revolutionary light. It never overheats in the flash mode, or in the video mode, which is amazing. It's water resistant. I just did a shoot with it in a rain studio and we had it underwater and it was like no problem with that. I mean, you can't dunk it underwater, but like for rain and storms and hurricanes, it's fine. And it's near pocket size. If you want to check it out, look how small this darn thing is. It's a handle. I don't know if you could see my little profile picture. Probably not because I turned it off. But anyways, it's really, really small. It kind of fits in your hand. And that's why it's different. It does things differently. And you can get some fantastic shots of it. And because you can shoot it continuously, you can just fire it at 20 frames per second, or you could use it as video. And as you know, video is the future. And so if you have video, if you want to shoot some Instagram video or whatever, you can just use it in the video mode and you can get both types of imagery, which is great. Okay, so let's talk about the most essential skill that you need when using lighting. So your first thing that you have to do is set your camera or expose your camera. Usually you would put it in manual mode so you can control this exposure. So keep it in manual mode and expose the place. For example, let's say you have some mountains in the background. Those mountains may be 100, 200 miles away, maybe even further, but you want those in your scene. Well, you're not going to take your little flash and light up a mountain. That's impossible. But you can set the exposure on your camera so that you can see those mountains. And so then you would expose for your background and the place that you are in. And then you'd bring your subject in, and their subject most likely is darker. And then you use your flash to light them up, or your video light or whatever to light them. So you expose the place, like maybe you're in a large concert hall, then you expose for what you want in your background in your frame, and then you light the face according to the right exposure. And if you light the face and it's too bright, then you turn the light down. If it's not bright enough, you turn it up or you move closer to it. So it's very, very easy. So you set the exposure of your background first. You lock that in and then use your light to control the exposure on your subject. Okay, so it's kind of a two-step process, but once you understand that concept, you are off to the races. Okay, so let's talk about studio lighting. How to use a light in the studio. And I'm literally just doing one backdrop and one light, and that's it. And I'm going to show you a few things that I did in this studio. And so what we're going to do is use, first of all, direct flash or video, meaning I'm not putting any softbox on it. I'm just taking this light straight out of the box and using it. Now, what kind of light does that create? So first of all, there's no diffuser on it. It's just the straight light. Okay. So the quality of light, it's called hard light. And when you use hard light, how do you know it's hard light? Is the you look at the shadows that it creates. And if it's creating sharp shadows on your subject, then you know that you're using hard light, or from a light source that is very small, like, you know, a flash right out of the box, or the Stella right out of the box. And so you can look at the shadow underneath her chin there, and you can see that sharp line there. That's a key in knowing that I'm using hard light. Okay, so when you use this type of light, the tip is that you have to put the nose towards the light, because the shadows are so sharp, and it could not look great if these sharp shadows are on the face. In order to avoid that, you need to put the nose towards the light, and then you will guarantee that the light is on the face at all times and not creating weird shadows over the face. And you'll make sure that you can avoid that, because you don't want to bring these photos in with hard shadows and try to get them out of Photoshop. It just doesn't work. So it's a little bit tricky using light this way, but you can get some great photos out of it. And I'm going to show you how to do it even in the studio. So one tip that you want to do when you're using this method is to use a light that has a narrow beam, so it only lights a small area of the subject, and then the light kind of fades off. So it's like a highlight or a spotlight. If you use it kind of like a spotlight, it will create some great effects for you, and it just makes hard light work. Okay, so, and it's kind of like a little bit of that film noir feeling, right? So here's using that, and you can see I'm just kind of spotlighting her face, right? And I got a shot like this, okay, where you can see that her face is exposed correctly, but then it just kind of fades off her face, fades off her, and then off her body, but lights her face. And you can see my settings here. I'm shooting with a Sony a7 IV. I have the 50mm 1.2 lens on. I have it at f4 because I want to kind of keep the detail in this shot. It's more of a studio shot, so usually you want everything in focus, like the clothes and so forth. So I shot a little bit higher, f4. I had it at 50th of a second. That was kind of a mistake by me. I should have probably had it a little bit, you know, higher. But I looked at the photos and they seemed sharp, and I have a pretty good hand. So I go, okay, they're all good. I didn't need to reshoot anything. So I just kind of went with it. And my ISO was at 250. In this particular case, when I was shooting with the Stella light, I believe it was at the lowest lighting setting, around 500 lumens. And that's all I needed. Okay, so it was like probably at the lowest level that you could actually put it in, and you still get good lighting. And so you can see the sharp shadow under her chin there. Then you know that you're in a hard light situation and you're using hard light on your subject. Here's another method that you can use with hard light, and that's using side light. And I love doing this technique when it's a low key situation. Now, that's usually with a dark background, dark clothes, and dark skin. Now, obviously, I didn't do any of that in this particular situation. So if I had a dark background and if she was wearing all dark, this photo would look a lot more dramatic. But I just wanted to show the technique on how to do this anyway, because with hard light, this really works well. Here's my settings. It's basically the same. I just maybe raised my shutter speed up just a tenth of a second, a little bit more. But what's more important is the position of lighting. And let me show you where the position was. So when you do this side light technique, people think, oh, put the light on the side. But actually, you put the light behind the subject to get this look. So side light is a little bit misleading in that you have to be kind of behind the subject to get this particular look. And that's why sometimes I love this light, because I could put it in constant light mode and I could actually see the lighting before I shoot it, which is so cool. So those are some two techniques that I use with hard light a lot. And it seems to work whether you're indoors or outdoors. And I'll show some more examples of that a little bit later on. But now when you shoot portraits, which you typically want to do, this is the most pleasing light for portraits, is using a diffuser. And this is, I believe it's either a 30 or 32 inch octabox. I think it's 30 inches. I can't remember. It's a light box that goes perfectly with the Stella. It just fits right on it. And it's super, super, super lightweight. I mean, it's the lightest weight softbox I have ever used in my entire life. And so it's just so easy to carry around with you. But I am going to set the light at about a 45-degree angle. Okay. And here's my magic formula for creating great soft light portraits. I call it the 3x3 rule, meaning you need a softbox that's about 3 feet or about 30 inches or larger, somewhere right there. And you need to put it 3 feet to your subject. So you got to put it really close to your subject at 3 feet. You are going to get the magic portrait. And you will not fail if you use that formula. So if you just remember that formula and you use a 3-foot diffuser and you get it 3 feet from your subject, you cannot lose. You will take a great shot every time. And now you can see the shadows that the softer light creates. It's a very smooth transition between, look at the highlighter in her face and the shadow. That line is very, very smooth there. Now, if you want to make the background darker, what you do is you can do two things. You can move your subject away from the background, which seems logical, but also if you move the light closer to the subject, it will make the background darker. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but because how the inverse square law works and everything, just trust me that makes your background darker. So you may want to have that background. You can control the darkness of that background, even if you're just using one light. You could do that by the placement of your subject, whether you're going to have it right next to the backdrop or you're going to pull it away. You can kind of control the brightness of the background in that way. Also, I just want to, say if you do have some questions and maybe if you put them in the chat, Scott, I don't mind you if you can jump right in and ask me questions before I go too far along if you feel that it's important. So feel free to go ahead and do that. And so you can see the gradual shadow line, right? So the highlight is on the face, and then that gradual shadow line between the shadow and her face is so gradual, you're in a soft light situation. And that is the most pleasing for doing portraits. And here's my settings here. It's basically, I shot it at f4, 160. It's the same thing. I just raised the power a little bit in my Stella to enable to accommodate the diffuser, because the diffuser will take some light away. And so typically you'll have to kind of double the light in order to compensate for that. I know Stella's diffusers, they're made differently to allow more light to go through, which is pretty cool. I think it's only a quarter stop or something like that that takes the light away. So not as much as a typical diffuser. And if you're going to use a softbox in this way with small lighting, don't double diffuse it because that takes too much light away. You can in certain instances if you're in a dark situation, but generally I just use just the one diffuser that's on top. I don't double diffuse it. And that's another thing that you want to do if you're using small lighting is take away that middle diffuser if you can. Okay, so here's another 45-degree placement, and I want you to see what the lighting looks like, okay? And so you can see the catch light in her eye, that you can see that the light is off to the left. Now I'm going to show you this next picture, and I want you to tell me where, what picture does she look thinner? Her face looks thinner. Now, did she all of a sudden lose 5 pounds? Or within, 10 seconds, she can lose 5 pounds. And so what do you think about that, right? Guys, what do you think? Obviously, in picture B, that face looks thinner. Why? And let me show you why, and why the positioning of lighting is important is when you put that diffuser right on top, right above your subject, you can create this look when you place it directly above. Again, because this softbox is super light, it's very easy to hold that way and to do that. And the larger the softbox, the easier it is to create this look with just one light. Usually people do this look with 2 lights, one on top and then one at the bottom to create that catch light for the eye. But if the softbox is very large, then you can get that catch light when it's a larger softbox. And so you can see the shadow on the 2 cheeks, and that's what makes the person. Shadow is really what lighting is about. To me, lighting is not about getting the right exposure. That's easy. Lighting to me is creating shadows and depth on your subject to shape your subject with the shadows to get the desired look. And just simply lighting your subject the right way could mean that they could look 10 pounds thinner, just the way you light it. And that's important. And that's really the hard part, is sculpting the light and creating the shadows to sculpt your subject. That's the hard part. Not getting the right exposure. That's easy. Anybody can do that. But placing it is what you really need to practice and work on, and actually see a master photographer on how he places the light. That's huge, because getting the right exposure, like I said, is easy. So you want to see those. Yes.
I just wanted to jump in real quick because we got a question in from Robert, and I think it's quite applicable here. We were talking a little bit. You mentioned about the strobe function or just the video mode, and he wants to know, when you're taking these photos, are you leaving the light in video mode, or do you go to alpha 1 or alpha 2 mode to strobe it?
Well, it depends on my lighting situation, and when I'm usually indoors, I can usually use this and in video light mode the entire time, because this video light is so strong that I don't need to put it in strobe mode. I mean, I can, but if I rather just see the light, than to actually strobe it and guess and take a look at it. But if I could just see how the light is falling on my subject, it's much faster for me. So when I'm in a low light situation where I can make my room darker, or my situations where it's dark, I'm typically always just in the constant light mode, especially with this light, because the video light is so strong on it. Does that answer your question?
I definitely think it does. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So you're going for those shadows. So that's why I put it in constant light mode, because I can position that light until I start to see those shadows. And that's how you know that you got the right look. Okay, so lighting is about shadows, which creates shape. Photography is 2-dimensional. The only way you're going to see texture and dimension with a photo, with a 2-dimensional picture, is through shadow. So lighting is all about creating those shadows and creating the texture, creating the shape, the depth, and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I do not really like an highlighter. Do you guys know what that is? It's like a lot of people do these headshots and they have this curved reflector that goes underneath that creates this little cool catch light in the eye. But a lot of times that highlighter takes away the shadow on the cheek and makes people like, I don't like it on myself because it's just going to make me look like I have more weight. And I don't like that. So I typically don't like those highlighter shots or have that light that's all even. I like some shadow to define and to cut my face. So that's what shadow can do, is really cut the face of your subject the way you want it to be. And so this is a typical butterfly look. Now, when you have that light high above your subject, you're going to see those deep shadows on the cheek. And then you're going to get that butterfly. They call it a butterfly shadow. When you get that kind of look, then you know you're doing the technique right. But what happens in this situation, when you make those shadows real deep like that, you don't get a catch light in the eye because the light is right over the eyes. And because our eyes are inset, you can't get the light in there. And that's why they have to have a reflector on the bottom to get that catch light in the eye. So if you're doing it all with one light, you want a large reflector so that light at the far edge will kind of get into the eye. And that's how you can do it. But you're not necessarily going to have these deep pronounced shadows like this butterfly style. So you can see, like I'm doing it, I'm getting the catch light in the eye, but the shadows are very faint because I have to move that light further away from the subject, because that I like that catch light in the eye. I mean, I guess I could do it and put it right above her head and get more pronounced shadows on her cheek, but then I might not get the catch light in her eye. And especially if a person has like pronounced eyelashes, or maybe they put really big, bushy eyelashes on their eyes, that light can't get in there. And then you have to have a reflector underneath, or you have to pull that light out so that light can have a better angle of getting right inside that eye. Hope that makes sense. All right, so let's go to a different situation where I'm using the direct flash. So I'm taking the softbox off, and again, I'm using the direct light to create this light for me. And what was happening actually in this particular room, which I'll show you a slide later, is that a lot of the light was coming through a big window, camera right, but the light wasn't strong enough to create that highlight and shadow on her cheek. You see the highlight and shadow, that shadow on her cheek? And so I use this light to accent the light coming from the window and kind of give it more and enhance it and boost it, so I could get a stronger light to create that cut look on the cheek that I wanted. And so you can see the situation here. That light was coming in, and you look at the subject, that light looks very flat, meaning the eyes are pretty dead. There's no catch light in it. There's no pronounced highlight and shadow on the face. And so I use this video light to create more light for me, even though there was a window there. And so see, you can see there, what's my camera say? Okay, so I did change my ISO here. I bumped it up to 400. I'm still at f4, but now my shutter speed is at like 2/50th of a second. And again, I'm just using that video light. It was probably set on probably 1,000 lumens or less, not that much more, but it just gave it that definition and that highlight and shadow that I wanted to create that look. And then I was experimenting a little bit more with it. And now it's like positioning that light to, as what I said before, when I use hard light, I use it like a spotlight. So I was just kind of fading that light off her body to kind of spotlight her face. As you can see there, right? I'm getting it above. And then I started creating shots like that, which I really, really liked. It's kind of, like I said, that film noir feel to it, where I'm just highlighting the face, and you can see how that light fades off the body. And that's another reason why you want to use constant light in this situation, because it's so easy. You just see the light, you can fade the light off the way you want it. There's no like shooting it 100 million times and guessing and repositioning. Even if you just had a light stand, you could easily do it this way too, because you can see the light. And so here I am at 3/20th of a second at ISO 400 at f4. And there I'm using it as more of a spotlight which I really like that effect. Again, when I go to hard light, I kind of like that spotlight feel to it. I think it just kind of works with the hard light situation. Now I'm doing something a little bit different here where, like I said, sometimes it's hard to get a catch light in the eye. And if you kind of use uplight, now don't go crazy with it or else it looks weird. But if you just give it a little bit of uplight, you can get that catch light. But then I was still creating that spotlight effect. And you can see in this next photo, I'm using uplight here, but I'm just highlighting the eyes. I just wanted most of that light right on the eyes to create a somewhat interesting look, even with direct light, and something very simple and something very easy you can do with the Stella light. Even just by itself, you could do this look all day long. You just turn it in video mode and boom, you're off to the races. Now let's take it outdoors. Now, does anybody have any questions in regards to shooting indoors with it? So those are just a few examples of how to use it indoors in a studio setting. If not, I'm just going to move on. I've got a few more different situations that I want to show you how I use it.
We do have some about outdoors, but I think you're going to address that now. So we'll hold them.
Okay, yeah. Outdoor stuff, I'm going to probably cover everything that they need to know about it. So just hang on tight. All right. So I think people want to know how strong it is and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of times what I do when I'm in an outdoor situation and here I have the sun coming this way, I actually let the sun be the main light. Now, sometimes that sun is so strong that the shadow that it creates across the face can be too strong. And so I use actually my secondary light to open up the shadow to get the look that I want. And so it's kind of like a 2-light setup, but I'm just using the sun as one light if it's kind of like at a 45-degree angle. And so you can see the shadow that it created. You can see that the sun is very, very strong, right? We're in Los Angeles, strong sun. You can see the strong shadow that it created against the wall. So you know you're in a bright light situation. So you can kind of get this look if you want to. And sometimes it works where you're getting this kind of studio look. And it's kind of like using 2 lights at 45-degree angles, but you only got one light. And I do this all the time if you want that kind of fashion look where everything is lit. Now, on her particular face, I don't like that. I wanted to cut that light and create shadow a little bit more. So I still did that, but I had her turn the nose towards the light where I got more of that loop shadow on her nose, as you can see. And you can see a little bit of shadow on her cheek. So you want the shadow as closest to the camera so you can see it. And so if you have the nose towards the light, you're always going to get this effect. And so then I had the video light on, but I didn't have it. So it took away the shadow. It was still there, but it wasn't very pronounced. And so it's still got this very kind of commercial quality look with it. Okay, so I'm doing this same tech. Don't worry, I'm still going outdoors. Okay, so I'm going to go indoors and I go outdoors. I'm going to show you what you want. We can talk about it. All right, so here I'm using that same technique. I've got that direct light. The sun is setting and it's going directly in that window. And how do I know it's direct light and not diffused light? Well, if you look at the shadow against the wall where that plant is casting, you see the sharp lines on that shadow. You know you're in a direct sunlight situation. When it creates sharp shadows like that on the wall, then you know the sun is just basically shining right in there. But I kind of liked the shadows that it was creating across her face. So I kind of positioned her so her face would get in there. And again, I used the video light on the side just to kind of open up the hair there and not make it too dark. And so I kind of like those shadows across her face there. Here's my camera settings. It's at 3200th of a second at 1.2 at ISO 125. And as you can see, I'm using that little reflex to just open up that hair there to give me some hair light. So it's just not completely black there. Now I moved her up a little bit because I really like the way the shadow crossed her face. Now that light was yellow, but I was gonna kind of create this black and light situation, film noir feel anyways. And so what I did was I used the sun as my main light and I used the reflex to create that rim light. You see that highlight on her hair there? that gives you dimension. And so here's the shot that I got out of that, where I positioned that shadow to kind of go right over her left eye there to give that look. And then as you can see, that light in the back there just lights her hair. And when you give that hair light, it gives more dimension and shape to your subject and a depth of lighting that it may be subtle, but it looks really nice with portraits. And it just makes that subject pop off the frame even more. So here I'm using it as a highlight too, and using the sun as my main. Okay, so now, and here's my settings for that. I'm at 2,000ths of a second here, so rather bright still. And when you are using, here's a little tip. When you are using direct light, it looks great when you find shadows in your background. And especially if you can get like just the light to fall on the face, right? And you get that natural fall off so that it highlights the face, because your eye goes naturally to what is brightest and what is sharpest. And so if the face is the brightest part, your eye is going to immediately go to it and not get lost with looking at that other stuff, which creates great impact. So I was looking at shadows. I saw the shadows on the wall. I knew it'd be a great picture. You know, we got the nice dog in there, Molly, and you know, there was a record player in the back, so I had her hold a record there and position that light right in. But the shadows really make that shot. And so when you're in a direct light situation, look for shadows. That's going to give you a great shot. Okay, let's go outside. So now we're outside, the sun is setting, and this is what I call a flat light setting. Right? We're shooting, the sun is behind the subject. And yeah, I guess I could take this picture, it would look okay. I could brighten it up maybe, but it's flat lighting, meaning what? Dead eyes. Look at the eyes, right? Because our eyes are kind of sunken back in their socket, right? A lot of times the eye socket creates a shadow over the eyes, especially if the light is just coming from above. And it gives you those dead eyes. And that's what I call a flat light situation, when I just don't see those eyes alive. But I'm in a very bright light situation. So what can I use my light to kind of create a great shot? And so here's the next shot where I'm using the flash. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Was I using soft light or was I using hard light? And how do you know? Right? If you were listening, you would look at the shadow line between the cheekbone and the shadow, and you could see that that is very, very soft. It's not defined, right? And you could say, well, he's probably using soft light here. Okay. And so and I love letting that backlight come right up. That's the sun coming right into the camera, giving me that lens flare. I love that feel to it. And so what I'm doing is I'm putting that softbox. How close am I getting it? I'm getting it pretty darn close. I would say, you know, within 3 feet or maybe even a tad closer sometimes. I'm pressing it right against her. And this flash had enough juice for me to be able to do it close like this, even through a softbox and with the Fresnel taken off to it. What was my camera settings? I was at 1.4 at 5,000ths of a second at 125. And so I was able to get that look, even though when it was in bright light, and use that soft light. And you can see the gradual shadow, meaning I'm using very large light, big light, meaning 3 feet wide diffuser and at least 3 feet or closer to your subject. Now, here, I'm going to try something different. I want to maximize the juice on this sucker and fire it. Now, if I put it to a battery, an individual 100-watt battery pack, which you can run the head just on a different battery pack, and you could get it up to even 18,000 lumens. But just with the handle, I could get it up to 6,000 lumens. And I wanted to soften the light a bit. So I took the Fresnel off of it, which actually makes it stronger. So I took that off of it so it could soften it just a little bit and put it close to my subject. And I got something like that, right? And you can see, how did you know that's hard light? How do you know it's hard light? What are you looking for? You see the sharp shadow on her neck there. So you can know, okay, he didn't use soft light there. He used very hard light there. What were my camera settings? Again, I was about 5,000 here. And I think I'm pretty much at full power on the flash to do this. 1.4 at 5,000th of a second. And I wanted to see if I could, let's see, I think I show another shot here again. Without the lighting, I would get a shot like this. And you can see the eyes, they're kind of dead. There's no highlight and shadow. There's no dimension because all the light is even. The background's blown out, right? And I can do that with the light. And you can see I have the sharp shadow on the side of her face, which is fine when you're outdoors in bright light. Now I have this rule, hard light with hard light. The sun is hard light, even though it's super strong and it's super large because it's so far away from the earth. When you look up at it, it measures really, really tiny. So it's actually a very strong, super tiny light source, which creates hard light. And so if you could look in the background there, you could see it's creating sharp shadows. So if you're in a situation where you see sharp shadows, you could use hard light because you're in an environment where there's harsh shadows, and then your subject, it's naturally, they're going to be lit by hard light. And so it's very natural when you're in a hard light situation to use hard light. Okay. So that's okay to do that. And a lot of times when I need maximum strength and I'm going for speed, I don't have time to put a softbox on. I just need to get a shot off like this. Hard light with hard light works all the time. Now, if you use hard light when it's a soft light situation, it might not look as nice. And you might want to use soft light, but in general, when you're outdoors, hard light with hard light is fine. You can see the sharp shadow line there. Let's take a look at the camera settings. Again, I'm at f4 at 5,000ths of a second. And I go, you know what? This lens goes down to 1.4. Let me try a similar shot, put my f-stop at 1.4 and bust up my shutter speed to max on my camera. And so on this shot here, I went it to 1.4 and I put it at 8,000ths of a second, right? And so, you know, when you're at 8,000ths of a second at ISO 124, you know you're in a bright light situation. And hey, you know what? This light was able to handle something like that. And you can see the sharp shadow. It's a hard light, but it still has a good look to it. And I will use it when I have to do it. But, you know, if I really wanted to showcase a beautiful sky, I would not actually use this method, doing it this way. I would actually use another method, what I will show right now is the direct sun method for beautiful skies. So when I want to showcase a beautiful sky with clouds, I use this method where I put the subject in direct sun. And the reason why this works is that sun is so far away that the light on my subject is relative, the exposure on my subject is the same as the exposure of my sky. Okay, so if I properly expose my subject, naturally the sky is going to be the same exposure because the sun is so far away that it's lighting both equally. Okay, so what's a few hundred miles of difference to the sun when it's that far away, right? It's going to light the same. And so I use this method all the time because the exposure of the subject equals the exposure of the sky. And it's a very, very fast workflow. I don't need any flash. I just like put them in the sun, right? No flash. Everything is great on her. I light expose my subject. Then the sky is automatically exposed for me. Boom. I shoot it. And what make these compositions look great is if you, again, look for shadows and put your subject and use those shadows in your composition, it's always going to be for a great shot. So that's what I do when I want to, showcase some sort of nice sky. I put them in direct sun. If I can, I find some shadows and I do a shot like this and it looks great. Meaning, so what does all this mean? So if I shoot this way and I want to showcase a great sky, here's my camera settings here. I'm at 2.2 at 8 thousandths of a second, which is like, it's super bright out there when you see those settings at ISO 100. So this means I don't fight the sun. I just go with whatever nature gives me. So if the sun is shining bright, let it shine bright. Let it shine bright on anything, everything. So if I expose for one, then if I expose to the plant's going to be exposed, the subject's going to be exposed, the sky's going to be exposed, the building, whatever the sun is directly shining on, it's perfectly exposed. And then I don't have to fight the sun and do the composite, kind of like put my flash in and all that kind of stuff. So I usually don't need a super powerful flash because I don't shoot in that situation often. But if I have to, like in this situation, right, the sun is behind the subject, I still can do it with my Stella light. I just put it close to my subject, and I may not be able to put a softbox on it. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, but I still can get this type of shot. And if worst case scenario is getting this shot with it and putting my light close to my subject, guess what? I'm fine because it's so small, it's so portable, it's so easy to use. It's also a video light, and I don't have to shoot in this situation. I rarely shoot like this where I fight the sun constantly. I'm usually using it in different ways. This light works fine for me. Okay, and here outdoors, here is my one more situation we did. We saw this billboard there on the roof, and we go, oh, that would be cool to do. So we got the subject up on the billboard. Unfortunately, it was April, and they still got the holiday. I guess nobody paid for I could put my own advertisement up there. I guess they would never know. It's only 4 months since they've changed it, so they probably forgot about it. I could have my own billboard actually and put my own logo up there. Okay, so here again is flat lighting, right? I put the subject up there. The sun is kind of camera right, and you can see that deadness in the eyes. I mean, it's an okay shot, right? But the background's kind of blown out, and I guess it's workable, but it's not really my style. I want some more drama to it. So all I do is I fire my little video light on there, and I shoot it with my 24 millimeter lens. And so I get more of this kind of look where it has a little bit more drama to it, a little bit more interesting lighting. And I go, you know what? This billboard is so wide, I can't go any farther back. I don't have anything wider, but do I? Yes, I do. I have my iPhone. So I take my iPhone out, which goes if you set your iPhone and you go to 0.5, which I think it's like 12 millimeters at that point. So it just goes to show you could have great lighting and use your iPhone with great lighting. It still looks great. And so just to prove it to you, this is my iPhone 12 Max. It's it's 14 millimeters in a 35 millimeter camera, right? It's shooting at f2.4, ISO 80, 120. Now, it's especially important if you're going to use iPhone photos in the dark like this to have light, because when you get into a low light situation, I don't know if you ever take these low light pictures on your phone and transfer it to your laptop or your computer. It looks like absolute crap because the sensor on the iPhone is so small. It can't give you a high quality image like your DSLR can. So you're going to need, especially if you're shooting in the dark with an iPhone, you're going to have light in order for it to be decent. Now, this is fine. I could blow this up. I could give this to a client. They wouldn't even know it's shot from my iPhone. It looks great because I have good lighting. Okay, now this is my last creative technique. Then I'm going to stay on because I got to give everybody something free. But what we did is my friend in his house, he had this projector shining against this wall, and he had this great idea. Scott, let's do some funky stuff where we can shine something. So I think he looked up on YouTube psychedelic, and then he found these patterns, right? And he shined it through the projector on the wall, and you're able to get shots like this. This is something creative you can do with a projector. I mean, you can always buy these projectors, I think, for around $300 online, or just take them from people, because they probably don't even use these anymore now that large screen TVs came in, played. So you can find them all over the place, and you can kind of do these cool effects with it. And this is just another idea that you can use with lighting. It's just one light. Now, I did do something a little bit different. You can't tell here, but I actually shot lower to my subject because I didn't want my shadow to shine on top of the subject or in the background. So I had to get down low. And then in Lightroom, I just changed the perspective. So I think it's vertical, right? And you can change it so it makes it look like I was shooting straight on. And so that's what I did to fix the perspective on these photos. Even though I shot low, look, it looks like I'm shooting straight onto her, but I wasn't. I was shooting well below her, but I just used the program to shift the perspective on it. And so you get some cool effects. And I was using my 24mm lens here at 2.5 at 60th of a second. Now, you may need to lower your shutter because you might get that flicker in there, especially if you're shooting video. You got to lower your shutter. So you just have to be mindful of that because it might interfere. So just if you do see those lines coming in on your frame, just keep lowering your shutter until you don't see it. All right, so that is my creative idea. I promised something cheap. I have a posing guide that you can have for free. You just go to scottrobertstudio.com, or you can scan that QR there. That's free for you. I've also got another low light photography class that you can have for free. Just go to scottrobertstudio.com, and that's all there for you. I am going to open it up to questions now. Anything that you want to know in my presentation, lighting situation, camera settings. I thought I pretty much went through everything there. So I'm not sure if you guys have any questions. I know our hour's about up, but I left a few minutes for us to have some questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, first of all, Scott. That was absolutely wonderful and quite in depth. I appreciated that you included the camera settings, because a lot of times you miss out on that. People don't want to share that, or people just want to kind of hide that and save the secret sauce, as they say. But you
well, I want people to know too that when you use your own lighting, it's best to be in manual mode. Because sometimes the camera, if you're in an automatic mode, the light may throw off your camera setting. And so you might not get exactly what you want. So that's why I say when you use lighting, to me, I always just have my camera in manual mode so I can individually control and adjust what I need to get the right shot. So usually I set my background first, and then I add the lighting, and then on the subject. So the light controls the exposure on the subject, where the camera setting controls the exposure on the background. Okay. And once you get that in your head, you got it down. You can do lighting. But that's a weird concept. It's like, okay, the camera lights the background, but your light source exposes the subject to what you need it to do. Does that make sense?
I think that's the best explanation, and I'm not just bloviating here. I'm really serious. That is probably, for me, I'm a very slow learner, and I've probably watched about 1,700 seminars so far. But I have to say that has resonated with me so far the best. So you've made it through this head. That's already a win.
Wow, man! I know I'm killing it now. I can get to Scott's head. Man, we are doing something here.
That's it. Don't tell anybody about it. Now, I do think that brings up a good point from a question we got here on Vimeo, though, because you did mention you use your flash or a camera in manual mode, but are you using a light meter when you're setting the light? No,
because okay. A light meter doesn't know if you're shooting a dark-skinned person, a light-skinned person, a skin with yellow, a skin with purple. So it can't read. It's giving you an average, right? And so that's why I always just look in the camera. If it looks good in the camera, that's my light meter. Ever since I've gone digital, why should I need a light meter? Because I can see what I want in the back of the camera. So if the background looks too dark, I adjust something to make it look good, and then I'm off to the races. And by the way, I shoot in JPEG. I've been a JPEG shooter in my entire life. I've had my photos published in top magazines or across the world. And I've no magazine person has ever told me, Scott, the quality is not good enough. So and I'm a JPEG shooter too, by the way.
He's giving you free courses and saving you space on your hard drive as well.
That's right. So you don't have to buy a lot of hard drives from B&H.
There you go.
I'm going easy on your B&H credit card there.
Putting us out of business. Now, James,
which I seem to max out mine all the time.
James joining us on Facebook wants to know, going back to the softbox.
Yes.
Do you like using a grid on your softbox, or do you just use it ungridded?
No, I don't, because I'm not really I'm a run and gun shooter. I can shoot in studio, and I do, but I usually just shoot basic stuff. A grid will help narrow that light on the subject, but for me, I don't, because it's just one more extra thing, and I seem to just be able to fade the light off or do what I need by holding the light and positioning it. And that's how I kind of narrow that light. But yeah, a grid is helpful if you need to narrow it and control that light. Usually when you're using more than one light, that's when a grid is important, because you don't want that light to spill over in different areas where you're using another light to control that exposure in that other area. So typically in a one light situation, I wouldn't think it's that necessary. And especially outdoors, you don't really need a grid, because when you're outdoors, everything is so expansive and wide, and everything, everything's so far away that you really don't need a grid.
Wonderful. Now, see, I keep getting confused here, because I think people are talking to me, but they're talking to you, Ricky.
Yeah.
Ricky said, Scott, it looks like when the light is on video mode, it's like there's more of a hot spot that you're working with as the light fades around the edges. Did you focus the light, or is that just something that's going on with the StellaPro?
Yeah. So what you can do is it has a Fresnel on it. And it's a medium. Let's see, I'm trying to find a picture of the darn thing. Okay, yeah. So you see this little attachment here that narrows the light there, and it also makes it stronger too. So you can pull that off. And so when I put it in the softbox, I take this off so I could get a wider beam on it. But I purposely, it's kind of like why people use, you guys heard of Magmod? People put those Magmod grids on their flashes. It's very popular style. Well, it's the same type of thing. It just narrows the light and gives you that kind of Magmod look. And for hard light, like I said, when you do a hard light and use that spotlight effect on your subject, it always looks good, right? And that's how you can get away just using hard light and not putting the softbox on and all that kind of stuff. So that's what that is. And I believe they have wider angle ones too, and even narrower ones if you wanted to. So that they have different types of Fresnels on there that you can use, or you could just take it off.
I know you had it up a couple seconds ago. I know you had your website up, but where can people find more of?
Just this is my, it has all my social media. It's my link tree, really. Just go to scottrobertstudio.com, or just scan that little QR that you see if you have your cell phone on you, whatever. You can get all my Instagram, my Facebook, and my workshops, and on all the free stuff there.
TikTok, Twitch, all of it.
Yeah, it's all there.
Excellent.
YouTube, whatever.
Scott, we really appreciate you doing this with us. A ton of great information. So thank you so much. And thank you for offering some free information to our customers, our friends, our people. I want to thank Janine and the rest of the crew over at StellaPro Lights as well. Without them, can't do this. Just be me sitting here, and you'd only have one Scott. but today you got to have the joy of two Scotts, which is great. So I want to thank you guys again, but that is all the time we have for tonight. This has been another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. We'll catch you next time.